It took Dorothy almost a minute to remove the last pair of panties, leaving Relina naked from the waist down. Dorothy looked at the panties for a moment, and then nodded, putting the last pair aside. "I'm glad that you did not have any accidents," she told Relina. Relina suddenly felt like a child being praised for the same thing. Dorothy reached into the handbag she had brought with her and removed something from it. Relina at first thought it was another pair of sanitary panties, but realized at once it was not. It was obvious that she was looking at an actual pair of training panties, made of thick material, a slight stiffness in the garment that suggested some sort of lining, like plastic. "Something more proper for you," Dorothy explained, holding them out so Relina could see them. They were cut even fuller than the sanitary panties, and on the back of them was a cartoon character cat. Relina felt her face grow hot as she looked at them. The sanitary pants had been, well, at least mature. The garment that Dorothy held in her hands was nothing but juvenile. It was a garment for a small child, barely a step above a diaper, for a child who was barely a step out of diapers. "I can't wear those," Relina protested. "Why not?" Dorothy asked, her voice full of innocence. "I'm not a child," Relina said. "I know. Those are for children. They are for anyone who can't be trusted to control themselves. I did find you wandering last night, in wet clothing, did I not?" Relina thought about just grabbing her pants and fleeing from the room, but she noticed that Dorothy was kneeling on them. For a moment she thought about struggling to get them, but she could not bring herself to do it. She pictured the waitress coming in, she and Dorothy struggling, Relina's naked bottom flashing to anyone who wanted to look. The imagined scene was enough to keep her from doing anything. "I don't want to wear them," Relina said quietly. "I'm certain that you don't want to wear them," she said, stressing want. "But it is obvious that you need to," she finished, stressing need. All Relina had to do was deny that she needed them, and admit that she chose to wet herself, for some odd reason she could not explain. That would be admitting that she was pathetic, like Dorothy had said the night before. She could not admit that. "Lift your foot," Dorothy instructed. Relina did as she was told and Dorothy slid the training panties over the foot. "The other," she said. The procedure was repeated and then Dorothy pushed the garment up Relina's legs before she stood so she could pull it the rest of the way, making sure it fit snugly around her. "There we go," she said, adjusting the garment, all ready in case of a little accident. She smiled at Relina. "Don't you think you should thank me?" Relina swallowed. "Thank you, Dorothy." "Don't mention it, Miss Relina," she said as she scooped the slacks off the floor and handed them to Relina. Relina quickly pulled the slacks back on, rushing to get them over the training panties and fastened around her waist. She was just finishing when there was a knock on the door. "Come in," Dorothy said. The waitress entered, carrying a set of menus and a small basket full of rolls. Relina felt relieved, knowing that she was covered, and for the moment there was nothing to worry about. Unless Dorothy decided to say something, perhaps ask for a child menu for her. She did not, however, and Relina was not really surprised. The lunch was actually a pleasant affair. Dorothy did not mention anything involved with the wetting and simply asked about Relina's job. They discussed the current affairs between the Earth and the colonies and debated the merits of one course of action over another. As usual, Dorothy was most inclined towards the use of force as a solution and Relina always looked for a peaceful solution. By the end of the lunch Relina felt quite relaxed and was very glad to have spent the time with Dorothy. As she got up, after having finished her coffee, she could feel the garment about her bottom, and its thickness. Dorothy walked up to Relina and gently kissed her on the cheek, at the same time giving Relina's bottom and the training panties a gentle squeeze. "I'll see you tonight. We'll have some fun." Then she turned and walked out of the room. Relina stared at her retreating back and wondered just what Dorothy meant by fun.